dead on arrival. We proved to them yesterday that 45 Republicans think it's unconstitutional to try a private citizen. There's a great deal of evidence. The Chief Justice didn't think it warranted him crossing the street to be over here because there is no provision for actually trying a private citizen. So this is really, it's a scandal, and it's a double standard, it's hypocrisy, it's all the terrible things. It's the bitterness of the election replayed over again, and it's just a sad day for the country.
It is a sad day, and I'm certainly no fan of the Chief Justice, but I have to credit him for refusing to participate in this fraud and this attack that has been going on for 4.5 years against now private citizen but former President Donald Trump. Your thoughts about his choice not to do as the Constitution requires, if there is to be an impeachment, preside over the Senate trial?
You know, I think there's actually a very interesting question. Did Chuck Schumer talk to Justice Roberts? I think he actually did, because think about it. Wouldn't they want Justice Roberts over here to sort of substantiate and give gravity to this so-called impeachment? My guess is, and I can't prove this, but my guess is Chuck Schumer called Justice Roberts, and Justice Roberts said, hell no, I'm not going over there, because this Constitution says I preside when we impeach the president. But there's no provision for impeaching someone who's not the president. How do you remove somebody from office who's not the president? But my guess is Justice Roberts actually had a private conversation with Chuck Schumer and said, I'm not coming. Because how did they so seamlessly go to having Patrick Leahy, a Democrat who already voted for impeachment, preside? How did they go so seamlessly without asking? So my guess is they privately asked, and he said, no way am I coming over to be part of that charade, but they didn't want to admit it. So somebody in the media ought to be asking Chuck Schumer, did you call Justice Roberts? I think it'd be an interesting question to ask.
I think it'd be a terrific question to ask, and I think you've probably provided the correct answer to it. But I also find it interesting, and I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts on this, as to why the national media has not asked, in any reporting that I have seen, why is it that Judge Roberts made that decision not to preside, despite the strictures of the Constitution, or because of the strictures of the Constitution? Don't you find it interesting that we're not seeing any reporting from any quarter on that very fundamental question?
Well, there are a lot of things they're ignoring. They're ignoring the constitutionality of this, but they've already leapt to this other conclusion that the president incited violence. But the language they point to is that he said, go fight for your country. And the question that should be asked of every Democrat should be, have you ever in a speech figuratively said, well, you should fight for our country? I don't know of a politician who hasn't used those words. But the interesting thing is, there's actually defense that he said go peacefully and march up there and show that, let them hear your voice. But what the media, if they were fair, would say is, what about Democrats who have incited violence? Should we impeach them? Kamala Harris has offered to bail out people who are burning our cities. She offered to help fund, and she suggested people should fund an organization in Minnesota to get people out of jail who were committing violence in our cities. Should Kamala Harris be impeached for that? Well, none of us have called for that because we think that's absurd. But really, if they're going to say the same standard should apply, should Bernie Sanders be impeached? When the gunman came to the ball field that nearly killed Steve Scalise, he was saying this is for health care. This is while Democrats were saying the Republican plan is you get sick and then you die. Does that not sound inflammatory? Could that not have inflamed this gunman to come to the ball field? I never heard an apology, but we were better people than they were. We never accused Bernie Sanders of it, but now that all sense of decency has gone out the window, maybe we should ask Bernie Sanders, are you responsible for the gunman? Maybe we should ask Cory Booker, who said, get up in their face. Is he responsible for some of this violence against congressmen? You know, it's just a terrible world that they're leading us to, and the idea that they would impeach anybody. You could be impeached. We could impeach Lou Dobbs, Rand Paul. We can impeach anybody that's not in office anymore. That is a crazy world they're sending us towards.
Or we could, in point of fact, examine the words of the government that President Biden now leads and some of its officers. We could examine the words of President Obama and wonder whether we should prosecute or persecute in kind a former president with impeachment. These are outrageous amongst decent American citizens, but there is no decency among the Democrat leadership in the body that you are in right this moment.
And if we're going to impeach former presidents, Woodrow Wilson's right up there at the top of my list. I'm really thinking that we should file papers on Woodrow Wilson as well. I mean, this is insane what they're doing, but we showed it to be a charade yesterday. And Woodrow Wilson's there. I'm waiting. As soon as I can get the votes, I'm going to put the papers in for Woodrow Wilson.
Well, I wish I had a vote in that as well. I'd be glad to follow your lead. Senator Rand Paul, congratulations again, and I hope that some of your colleagues were persuaded by your comments yesterday. They were eloquent and absolutely righteous. We thank you for being with us. Senator Rand Paul.